Record on this computer. All right, I think we're recording. All right, so everybody, welcome to the Colorado Hydrogen Network January meeting. And you can see the agenda here. I've had that up for a little bit. Of course, the big news today is the Federal Highway Administration grant, and we're going to focus in on that. Also want to talk a little bit about clean tech in Colorado and how maybe that's going to change a little bit around CHN and CCIA and those kind of things. And if we have time, we'd like to talk a little bit about the possibility of our stakeholders sharing services. Maybe things like test equipment, that would be in the asset category, or maybe around testing. So we'll see how far we get today, because I want to make sure that we've got plenty of time for questions. So sorry with this format, I can't really kind of have some personal time with everybody like you could at a live meeting, but it certainly allows us to have people from all over the country participating. So, all right. So to talk about a little bit of the news, there was, it was called a Day at the Capitol that was sponsored by the Colorado Clean Tech Industries Association. And a number of us went down, got a little bit of a tour of the Capitol, got to hear a little bit about how some of the legislative process and so forth works in Colorado. But you can see I'm there on the far right. I was the only geek that wore a tie, but better to be overdressed than underdressed, I guess I'll say. And if the session wasn't going, and I think if you go down to the Capitol during the regular session, people be a little bit more dressed up. But you can see Senator Chris Hansen is there. We got a chance to talk with him, I would say 45 minutes at least, and ask some questions about energy and how things were going. Very, very sharp guy, and he is so active in renewable energy. It's really great that we've got him. All right. The other thing that happened, this was yesterday, is Phil Clark, and I don't know if Phil is on, but he held a training session on the National Fire Protection Association 2. That's an entire volume devoted to hydrogen. And it was such a great class that I did want to give a little shout out to Phil. I mean, his PowerPoint skills are some of the best that I've seen, and that's kind of a study that I've made of how do you present PowerPoint that's not too detailed, but just detailed enough. And he did a great job, great graphics with that. Phil is also very engaging to listen to. I mean, we sat there for 8 hours, and I know I wasn't bored, and I have a short attention span, so he does a good job. He was well organized. I mean, the NFPA isn't necessarily organized probably in the best way. And Phil kind of pointed that out, how it jumps around a little bit, but he was able to kind of break that down, put it in a format that was easy to follow. So if Phil does another training, highly recommend that you take part in that, because there's a lot of important things, of course, around fire code and building code and things like that around hydrogen. So all right, so that was yesterday. Now, tomorrow, the DOE is putting out a workshop here in Denver, and I'm going to be attending that. It's closed. As a matter of fact, I had gotten a notice that they had oversold, and they had asked people, are you really going to come? And if not, let us know, because we can free up your spot for somebody else. But um, as you can see, this bringing together stakeholders from industry and academia, national labs, and the government. And they're going to talk about medium and heavy duty transportation, industrial and chemical manufacturing, and long duration energy storage. So I've signed up for a couple of workshops that are like breakout sessions on this, one to do with hydrogen fueling and the other on energy storage. So I'll take copious notes and report back to everybody on that. I know Brendan's going to be down there. Maybe I'll see some others of you down there as well. All right, so let's deal with the 800-pound gorilla in the room. I think this grant, and we covered this on the latest Hydrogen Nowcast podcast. Seth Terry agreed on a very, very short notice on I think it was a Saturday night. We recorded this and put this out really quickly to kind of go over that. So I encourage you to go to your favorite podcast app, just look for Hydrogen Nowcast, and listen to that latest episode. But we are going to review this here. And again, I've muted everybody, but please, if you want to interject something, especially I say Buford is on, jump in. Andrew is on as well, and add something. Don't be shy about interrupting me. So this grant was awarded to a number of states, and I didn't give you any information on these other states here, but Colorado actually received two grants. One was for um, battery vehicle charging up in Boulder. And then, of course, the other is for this hydrogen refueling corridor, we're calling it. And I'm going to go into some detail on that. And the federal part of this is almost 9 million, 8.977, but it requires a 20% match. And so that's going to bring the total to 11.2 for these three fuel stations. You can see in red here, there is a very nice press release that uh, Alan Best did. I don't know if Alan's on. It's too hard for me to search all the names here. Sorry, everybody. But encourage you to either use the shortcut I've got here, this tinyurl.com/CFI, the charging fueling infrastructure press release, or go to bigpivots.com and take a look at what Alan is doing. If you're not already on his mailing list, you might want to consider doing that because he does a really great job covering um, energy and other environmental things in Colorado. All right, so I'm going to go over the grant, and this is actually a review of some slides that I presented back in June, but I know not all of you were on back then. You may have kind of forgotten what it was, so I thought it's worthwhile to haul these slides out again, and I've updated them a little bit too. But as you can see there, the proposal was submitted in June, and I had a heavy part in that proposal, working on that, even though I won't be part of the execution of this program. The award was last Thursday on the 11th, and the proposal project team is Colorado State University, who will be the prime contractor, and they'll actually be the owner of the Fort Collins fuel station, which will be installed at the powerhouse, the so-called powerhouse, the Energy Institute up in Fort Collins on North College. New Day Hydrogen will be the owner of the Denver and the Pueblo fuel stations, but they'll operate all three fuel stations. And Buford, absolutely jump in if you disagree with anything I'm doing here. I just helped with the proposal, and I'll probably help with some of the fundraising to get to that 20% match that we have to meet. We're expecting that John Cornish's company, EPC, will be the supplier of the fuel stations, and John and his son David and the company is up in Cheyenne, just 4 miles over the border into Wyoming. And we're planning on having NREL kind of look over our shoulder a little bit, do some consulting, also collect some data and do some analysis and report on how we're doing. And we felt that was really important to give the Federal Highway Administration a warm fuzzy that we've got some adult supervision here, put it that way. And NREL has been so involved with the fuel stations that have gone in out in California that they can certainly alert us to anything, any gotchas or lessons learned, maybe put it that way. And I see Sean Honorato from NREL is on, so Sean, absolutely feel free to jump in if you like.
Well, thanks,
Oh,
Brian. Appreciate it.
yeah, you bet. And Happy New Year. I haven't talked to you for a while.
Yeah, Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah. All right, so the program, and again, this is a bit of a review from what we did back in June, but it's for three hydrogen fuel stations. As I said earlier, the one at Fort Collins and their population up there is 354,000 will be at the powerhouse. In Denver, and I'm going to give some more detail on these sites. Right now, we think it's going to be Washington and I-70, but that's not locked down yet. And then the location in Pueblo isn't locked down yet either. And um, you know, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but you can see the location on the map there. Sorry about the blue dot. That's my house. I wasn't sure how to make Apple Maps remove that, so ignore that blue dot. But you can see we've got a pretty good coverage here of that I-25 corridor. All right. So another part of the proposal is workforce training, which of course we can rely on the university to do. We're certainly going to need people to operate and maintain the fuel stations and so forth. Also, part of New Day's business plan is enlisting the fleet users for the medium duty vehicles. And they've already got some letters of intent from a few of the um, fleets out there because we got to have customers for these stations. We didn't feel it was the right thing to do to just ask for money for the stations without some kind of a plan for who's going to buy the hydrogen. And then the other thing, and this funding is not for vehicles is not from this grant, but the state of Colorado has got a number of avenues for getting funding for vehicles to help match the price of the hydrogen vehicle to what the fleets are paying for gasoline and diesel. And and of course, there's also some federal incentives there as well. And then the other part of the program, as I already mentioned, was this 20% match, which we're expecting to come from equity investors and donations. All right, I want to pause there. So I don't know, Seth or Buford or Andrew, you want to make any comments?
Well, I mean, I think one of the comments is I think really one of the strengths in regards to this proposal. I mean, obviously we think we put a good proposal together, but one of the strengths really is the folks that supported us through this process. And that's everything from we got letters of support from the city of Fort Collins, the city of Pueblo, the Globeville community, which is the that community just north of Denver. We got letters of support from Senator Bennett. From Congresswoman DeGette, and a host of other folks that really, really were I think a huge part of why we ended up with this. Brian made reference to several of the fleets. They also provided letters of support via Mobility Services, Fluid Truck, Colorado Car Share. So a lot of folks, providing a lot of support that I think really was what pushed it over the edge for this to be a selected project.
Well, thanks, Buford. And that really speaks to the work that you and Seth have been doing for the last, 2 years at least of um, laying the groundwork, talking to these fleets, talking to the sites. I mean, just so much work has gone into this. And I think that really showed in the proposal. And I'm sure that's part of why it was won. So I know Seth is on. I don't know, Seth, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you want to comment or anything, or Buford, if you wanted to say something else.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that this speaks in a lot of ways to, a little bit different approach. I don't want to necessarily say contrarian, but a little bit different approach than we're taking to setting up the infrastructure market than a lot of other folks. In that we are focusing really on the much smaller incremental adoption, early stage potential in the market, not just the large step function type of approach, which is, where a lot of people laudably are looking. I think it plays well down the road for them as we try to bring down the cost of hydrogen. But in the meantime, this incremental approach of an on-site distributed production of hydrogen really is the cheapest, greenest way of bringing hydrogen to the market in this early term.
Yeah. Thank you, Seth. All right.
Yeah, I did want to mention, I saw Maria's on, one of the other big supporters that we had was CEO CDOT. So a lot of support from the state level as well. So Maria, thank you for that.
Yeah, this takes a.
I'm sorry, Brian, if I could just add one more
ahead.
thing and tagging along there on Buford, thanks to the state, we received an OEDIT Advanced Industries grant, and they have been wonderful. I spoke to Rama Harris this morning there again. They've been wonderful about not only providing the generous grant award to us, but sticking with us and helping us get some extensions on receiving that grant. And hopefully we're going to bring that all together here and be able to realize that opportunity from the state.
Yeah, thanks, Seth. And I do want to underscore what you said about the Colorado Energy Office really providing a lot of support, especially with the Clean Fleets Enterprise, the Clean Transit Enterprise. And Maria, if you want to comment or anything, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you want to add anything, please feel free.
No, we're really excited to see that this was awarded in the state of Colorado, and we have just reach out and want to support it any way we can. So we'll be having some conversations with you all to see how we can help support this moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, Maria, and thanks for all the work that you've done and the help that you've given us over the years. Like I say, it really was kind of a group effort, but I think that speaks to just really laying the groundwork to getting everything in line to be ready for something like this. So being an
Yeah,
engineer,
Brian,
go
I'll
ahead.
just add from the CSU side. I mean, I don't have too much to add substantively, but yeah, just to say that we're pretty stoked up here to be leading this project and eager to get it going. You know, having fueling stations accessible to the public, you know, is important to our vision and all of the research that this will enable here at the powerhouse as well. It's a big deal, so we're excited. And then, you know, one thing that I can't recall offhand, and I don't know if you want to speak to this at all, but you know, the kind of the classic chicken and the egg problem here with hydrogen. I believe part of the grant is covering operating expenses to kind of offset or you know, permit these stations to be online even when demand is limited in the primary stage of the project. Is that true? I can't remember what we wrote there.
That is true, Andrew. You know, it's a 5-year agreement that's covered in there for the 3 stations. So, yep.
Yeah, Andrew, I know a lot of the people on the line know you, but would you just give a quick introduction of your role up at CSU and who you are?
Sure. Yeah, I presented to this group a number of times, but
Right.
for those that aren't familiar with our program, I'm Andrew Zdanowicz. I'm a research engineer up here at the powerhouse. So, you know, we're the kind of the largest standalone green energy research facility in the country, at least at a university level. Up here, I work with Brett Wyndham, who is the PI on this hydrogen installation project. But, you know, mostly we do all things combustion, all things hydrogen related. A lot of green energy installations up here, and in particular, with, you know, we've found a niche in large scale demonstration testing. So we've got, you know, a 5,000 horsepower gas turbine up here that we're trying to run on hydrogen. We've got a number of solid oxide fuel cell projects, hydrogen IC engines, et cetera. And you know, one of my primary responsibilities is this active installation of an electrolysis bank for our facility. So we've been trying to, it's a NEL C20 that we're trying to bring online to provide, you know, hydrogen here for our own research consumption. But now we're turning it into a public facing utility as well. Yeah, so I'm largely responsible for project execution here, and I help out with grant writing, including this hydrogen refueling network. So anyway.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I know that you did present a few times, but we've always got new people joining, and so wanted to make sure everybody knew who you were. And what Andrew was talking to here was this is the powerhouse facility, and some of the items here, like the solar Centaur 40 gas turbine and so forth, was what he was referring to. But so let me talk a little bit to the Fort Collins station, because I think most of you are familiar with back in 2020. Sean Honorato, who from NREL, who's on the call, and I worked. I think, Sean, it took us about 4 months to convince Nell to donate a fuel station that was going to be decommissioned. And that was built, it was actually Proton On-Site at the time, and Nell took them over. And that was built, I think, around 2014, or at least redone in 2014. So it was getting a little old. And one of the things about it was that it had in one cargo container the electrolyzer plus all of the electrical switching equipment, the circuit breakers and things like that. And that really didn't meet code anymore. And so what was decided to do was to bring the electrolyzer and some low pressure storage into the powerhouse building and then have a dispenser outside. So this isn't going to be all cargo container type of station. It's going to be split up a little bit, and this diagram illustrates that a little bit. Now the dispenser is shown as this little tiny blue box, but it's probably not going to end up looking like that. But the electrolyzers, the stacks are going to be inside the powerhouse. There's going to be low pressure storage. And then high pressure storage and dispensing is going to be outside. And I think, we're still developing what exactly that's going to look like. And Andrew, I don't know if you want to, if I'm misstating anything, if anything's changed, please jump in. But
Nope, that's correct. The only other piece that I think maybe you talked to is a low pressure storage. So
right.
we're going to have two tanks essentially. One to kind of service our daily draw here in the powerhouse if we're testing an engine, or what have you, and then we'll have dedicated high pressure cylinders for actual vehicle refueling, public facing.
Yeah, and this was a pretty big overhaul at the powerhouse. Do this, wasn't it?
All of these projects here at the powerhouse, since we have so many ambitious PIs, battling for space. Everything is, kicking one project out to fit some new technology in. We actually had to build a new floor for this installation. So the first 6 months of working on this was literally a construction project. So anyway, yeah, it's been a big overhaul, and excited to keep doing it, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, tell everybody what PI stands for.
Sorry, principal investigator. Yeah, that's academic lingo for you. Basically, the top dog, the leader of the project.
Yeah. Okay. Almost like a project manager, maybe, or something like that. But
yep.
The one who went and got the money.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, well put. By the way, this powerhouse building is called that because it was a electrical generation building for a long time. All of that, the turbines and things were removed, and it stood empty, I think, for a while. And then the university grabbed it, added on to it, and now it's this great research institute up there. So great asset that CSU has got. All right, so this is the existing dispenser module from that Nell station, and it's a 20-foot cargo container, and it's got these rolling garage door type doors on the side, so that's why it's completely open. But what's in here is basically tanks, which you can't see. They're actually behind a partition here, but those are the high pressure tanks back there. A big old hydropack compressor here, kind of just going counterclockwise here. There's a number of valves that do what they call bank switching. So you can store hydrogen at different pressures in the different tanks. And so that engages tanks or not, takes them on or offline. There's a big block of aluminum here. It's about a meter square, or meter cube, I should say, that is used for pre-chilling the hydrogen that's dispensed at 700 bar. And so that's what that is. This little white box has got the programmable logic device controller in there for turning the compressor on and off, for doing the bank switching, for doing the dispensing, and all those things. The dispenser, which you can't see, is here, and it's on the other side of the wall, of course, public facing. And then there's some more valves here, and then there's a chiller up here for the very low temperature chilling, as well as I don't think you can see it, but there's another heat dissipator, condenser, or whatever for the compressor itself. So this all fits, in a 20-foot container with plenty of room to spare. And Andrew, I don't know, I assume the idea is to just keep this, not to redo it.
Yeah, correct. There's no need to pull it up. I mean,
Yeah.
we have to, rebuild the compressor. Those tanks have, been cycled beyond their lifetime limitations. So I think we need new tanks in there. But yeah, all of that is going to stay the same.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a big overhaul here, and who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if you decided to redo the controller. Just
Right.
trying to reverse engineer what's there might be worse than just starting over. So, all right. So that's the design for Fort Collins. Now, the Denver and Pueblo stations are going to be identical, and they will be three cargo containers, and I'll show you that footprint here in a minute. But one container is going to contain an electrolyzer, and then of course there's got to be a cooling system and water conditioning to support that. Then another container will have a compressor and quite a bit of hydrogen storage, 210 kilograms worth. So that's a significant amount of storage. And then the dispenser container will have the chiller for the 700 bar. This will have the user interface and, of course, the nozzles and so forth for dispensing. And that's the plan at the present time. So what that looks like physically, and this would be like bird's eye view looking down on the containers. And of course, these could be configured any way you want in an L or a long line or whatever the site kind of dictates. But this is probably the most compact, showing the electrolyzer, the compressor and storage tanks and another 40-foot, and then dispensing and control in a 20-foot container. And I'm showing the dispenser at the end, but you could maybe have it on one of these sides as well. Now, if you want to double the amount of hydrogen produced and stored, all that's really needed is adding another electrolyzer and another compressor and storage tank, or container, I should say. Beyond that, you might say, well, could you do that again? Add another copy of container 3 and 2 and 3. Well, probably not, because I think you'd start running into conflicts at the dispenser where you'll have long
So
lines
Brian,
of people.
if I may
Oh,
interject.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so really what we're doing is the intent would be to stack the same entire module unit one on top of the other, and we just feel like that will provide a lot more flexibility. It will also help out in the event that we are getting obviously to a little bit higher capacity, larger number of vehicles. It also helps protect against back-to-back fueling requirements. So I think that we're just going to stick with that same system regardless, and not try to double up on the dispensing and cooling.
Oh, okay. All right. So you would duplicate
Exactly.
this left one at a second time. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and yeah, as you say, then you could separate these physically so that you don't have a line of traffic trying to get to the dispenser and so forth. Because obviously people aren't going to spread out over a 24-hour day. Most people are going to show up probably between, in business hours. So. Okay. All right. So I wanted to talk a little bit to the proposed station location, and this is not locked down yet, but generally it'd be somewhere near this area of Washington and I-70. And even though it's a it's a mousetrap, as they call it, looking at how you can get to that, you can come from southbound I-25 and get to this site, from northbound I-25, from east and westbound I-70. Not the part of town where probably most people think about buying fuel, but certainly central in Denver. Buford, jump in if there's anything that's changed here that I don't know about.
No, like you said, we haven't necessarily nailed down the the location, but that general proximity in the Globeville neighborhood is what we're looking at. We've got a couple of potential locations, in that general area that we're currently evaluating. But you're right, that's the general proximity we're looking at.
Yeah, and this is what was in the proposal.
Yeah.
So this is what that site looks like. This is looking southwest. This is Washington, and this is what, 46th Avenue, 47th. So you can see there's a big flat open piece of land here, which would make a good location. And I guess to be determined where the curb cuts end up being, but conceivably, if you wanted to keep it simple, you could have people coming north on Washington swing into it here. I assume you can see my cursor. Maybe I should go to laser. Here we go. So northbound Washington could swing in here. You could get out and go southbound Washington, come through this intersection to go northbound Washington, and so forth. So
And
TBD,
again,
but
for clarification, this is one of several sites that we're currently evaluating right now.
Right.
We don't have any identified site just yet.
But one of the keys is that this is near the CSU Spur campus, which is all three stations are associated with CSU, so they're in the vicinity. All right, so moving on to the Pueblo location, what we identified in the proposal was a site that was, I guess, verbally at least offered at the industrial park that's there in Pueblo. And what I'm showing here is access. If you're on the north end of I-25, you get off on highway, I can't even read it, 80, 50, and swing this way. It's about 5 miles, 7 minutes. Or if you're at the south end of I-25, you wouldn't go way up to that. You'd swing in this way. Little bit of distance away from I-25, 5 miles, which isn't ideal, and this is kind of a remote location. We had hoped. Oh, go ahead.
It is, however, it's a freight corridor, so that is a nice thing that that could be potential there. But we've been in conversations with the city of Pueblo, and they found an alternative location that is closer to I-25 that could align really nicely with that I-25 north-southbound traffic. So once again, just like that Globeville Denver area, we're still evaluating locations, but the locations that were in the proposal were good. We're trying to find ones that might be better for the potential customers, and in general, freight traffic moving through there.
Yeah, and to that point, there is a site that could be a possibility on the CSU campus, and we just there wasn't enough time during the proposal to really get with the campus authorities and work through that. But you can see in this photo here, this is the street view of the site looking southeast. It's not used right now. This would be more or less a temporary setup anyway, until the demand for hydrogen exceeded the capacity of these modular stations. But this one's a little bit better. It's about half the distance, 2.3 miles. So we'll see where that goes. We'll have to continue having discussions with the university. And as Buford pointed out, there might even be another location. So. And here's maybe a little bit better view of where that industrial park site is and the university site. Buford, the other site you were talking about, is that near one of these highways?
It's basically, I think it's off of 50 and 25 right there. So just south of where your pointer is. Yeah, right in that area.
Right in that area. Okay. All right, good. All right. Well, obviously these things are going to be worked out here very soon. So. All right. Let's see. Sean Daniel, are you on? I didn't look.
Before we leave the fuels, a couple of questions, Brian.
Sure.
This is Howard Gerwin. First time I've been able to actually make one of the calls. So it's nice to kind of hear what's going on. But a couple of questions about the fueling station. Has anybody? It's really in terms of customer base. You mentioned like medium duty trucks and transport. Has there been any discussion at all about off-highway uses, access to the off-highway uses of the fuel, or reaching out to Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, and asking what it takes for them to make their fuel cell vehicles available in Colorado?
Yeah,
When you say off highway, are you talking like construction equipment and stuff like that?
I think there's construction equipment. There's also people messing around in power generation, fuel cell-based power generation.
Sure.
JCB has built a fleet of like 50 internal combustion engine powered hydrogen machines on their own nickel. I don't know that any of them have found their way to this side of the Atlantic yet, but I'm just kind of thinking about, as you think about creating these sites, and these sites are really exciting, is who's going to make up the users, and how are you going to? The more I read about this, the more there's a bit of a chicken and egg sort of thing. And well, where is the hydrogen going to be used? Well, where's the hydrogen available? Well, what are they going to use it for?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm just kind of running through my head as I'm listening.
Yeah, there's clearly a chicken and the egg, but we're not entering into this with an if you build it, they will come type of a philosophy. We're actually going into it with a partnership with commercial fleets that'll underpin the station. Brian mentioned several of those, but we're in conversations with others as well that'll support the station. Those will be the folks that will be the original utilizers of the station. Not to say others couldn't, as Brian
And it would
indicated
be,
early on.
it'll be
The
a
intention
retail
is
site, assuming it'll just be a retail site for fuel, just like any other.
that's the intention is it'll be public facing retail site.
Okay, I'm wondering about kind of making sure that, you're reaching out to these fleets, but how do you make sure that other potentials who might come into the market, if somebody wanted to do high altitude testing on a hydrogen piece of construction equipment, they would not necessarily know that this existed, but knowing that it would say, hey, well, let's bring some hydrogen equipment into the Denver area and let's try it out,
Yeah.
or
So
come.
there's
I'm shitballing here.
Yeah, there's several ways that does get identified. DOE has their alternative fuels website that will be located on that, which identifies all the hydrogen fueling stations across the U.S. and their current status. So we
Okay.
will be identified on that, and we are in conversations with several, with quite a few of the off-road, construction equipment, materials handling equipment providers. So they're aware of what we're doing. I don't know if that'll be necessarily a great fit for these stations. They'll primarily be focused on road, but they will be available if they wanted to come by and pick up some hydrogen. We'd be more than willing to do that. Our intention is to get the news out as much as we possibly can, because we will have the vehicle or the customers that we've been talking to, but we'd love for additional beyond that to start coming to that, start building up that hydrogen market, really started taking off here in Colorado and beyond.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I was on mute. I was coughing there for a second. So Howard, if I could speak to your point about the automakers, that's a whole business plan in and of itself. The Hondas and Hyundais and Toyotas of the world don't really want to stand up a dealership, start selling vehicles to the public, and start servicing those till they know they've got a constellation of stations. But I've had conversations before, I know at least with Toyota, about how we get things started, how we do like beta testers, if you will. And unfortunately, my two contacts at Toyota have both left the company, and I'm rejuvenating those. But would like to propose to those that they, if not sponsor, at least sanction bringing in a small number of vehicles that would be driven by people who are beta testers, who are basically trained a little bit, people who understand that this isn't exactly a car business as usual as far as just buy it, drive it all the time, and fuel it any place you want. There'll be a little bit of inconvenience, I would say, maybe for them having to go to just one site to buy fuel in their city. But we envision that those vehicles would all have signage on them, advertising hydrogen, and could be used to basically increase public awareness, kind of like a PR. Because frankly, they're not going to be buying that much fuel to really have that much of an impact on supporting these stations. But the big advantage to those is that people see them around town, and
Yes.
it's advertising. So that's the plan. Right now, Toyota, Honda, and Hyundai don't really know anything about this. We're working to, now that we've got these sites going in, to work with them and see what they'll be willing to do.
That's sort of what I was thinking about. Having the hydrogen vehicle outside of Southern California, it requires, it's just not possible right now. But again, it's like if somebody doesn't put one here, nobody will see it, nobody will think about it. And if you have enough of them, then you can afford a fourth station, sort of thing. And you're thinking about it the same way I was, Brian. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and frankly, these automakers have to think about how they're going to move their market outside of California. I mean, if they think that every state is going to belly up and build fuel stations like California did, that's the day unicorns fly, So that's just not going to happen. And I think this could be a very attractive paradigm to them to say, okay, this is how this is the tip of the spear. This is how we start getting this technology into other places outside of California. So hopefully they'll see it that way. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of, again, it's like, you've got enough coverage that you could at least use it in a meaningful way. If you lived in Denver, east side of Denver, whatever, you could actually have this as a meaningful way it could be a meaningful tool in your life. It's not as limited, or as if there was only the one station in Colorado at CSU. I don't know. There's something there, and I'm glad to see you're thinking about it. Thank you.
Well, and there's a bunch of us in town that, myself included, that are going to go out there and get a fuel cell vehicle to fuel it. But we're going to keep our our other vehicle because, if I drive to Wisconsin,
trailer.
Yeah, and that whole thing. But Howard, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody? Because I don't think everybody knows who you are.
Okay, yeah, sure. My name's Howard Gerwin. I live in Lafayette, and I'm the sole proprietor of a small consulting company, and most of my consulting is around decarbonization of power, mostly engines. I work with a number of engine manufacturers and engine users looking at hydrogen and alternative fuels and what options might be out there, working primarily in technology strategy. And I got connected through that work to Brian. My clients include companies that are trying to build IC engines, convert diesel engines to run on hydrogen. And what they've shown is that it's a very attractive step before fuel cells. Their IC engines running hydrogen they're robust in the face of bad quality hydrogen or dirty hydrogen, as it were. It's easy to make the transition. I'm assuming a lot of the equipment you'll probably see initially will be IC engines rather than fuel cells.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not a hard step to make, and it's not an expensive step to make. It just needs hydrogen available. Most of my clients are mostly in the off-highway domain. That's why I always ask off-highway questions.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, there's been a couple of interesting engines shown, anywhere from like 75 horsepower up to like 500 horsepower off-highway engines that people are talking about for hydrogen.
Yeah. Well, a lot of us have speculated, would there be a lower grade of hydrogen that might be used for internal combustion versus the fuel cells? And a lot of people I talk to say, well, do we really want to support two infrastructures for that? But,
Yeah.
it's going to be tough to get price competitive, I think, with hydrogen for internal combustion, unless maybe you go to a dirtier version. And I don't mean dirtier in the sense of carbon emissions, but I mean dirtier in the sense of less pure hydrogen for the internal combustion.
Funny enough, living in Colorado, one of the first production applications of a hydrogen-powered IC engine is actually snow grooming equipment in the Italian Alps.
Yeah,
an Iveco engine.
Yeah, we've been talking to Andreas at Prenoth for a few years about that, trying to get that out here. So we'll see.
Maybe the next one has to be at Vail.
Well, those snow groomers consume about 100 gallons of diesel a night. That's as much as an 18-wheeler is going to consume. So they're not trivial in the amount of polluting.
Oh yeah, they work hard.
And with the population that frequents the ski areas are all pretty environmentally conscious. So, there's a lot of good things there. So we'll see. I think buses at ski areas are another good candidate for hydrogen as well.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
You bet. So let's see. I think that was my last slide on if I get things to react here on the grant. Are there any other questions or comments or anything maybe before we move on? No? Okay. All right. Well, we can always come back to that too with questions later. So, Sean, I see that you are on, and very quick introduction. Sean contacted me a couple of weeks ago with an idea about shared services, which maybe we'll get to at the end. But I did want to give Sean a minute to introduce himself and his company Spark, and what you guys are doing. So, Sean, go ahead, and I can stop sharing if you want to share any slides.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've got a couple of slides. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Yeah. The floor is yours, as they say.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, Brian. Welcome, everyone. Nice to meet y'all. My name is Sean Daniel. I'm the CEO of Spark Ionics. We're the recipient of a few OEDIT grants. I've met a few of you already, been to the powerhouse, seen the electrolyzer up there. Can't wait to get an AEM in it. Hint, hint. So yeah, basically what we do is we're commercializing a technology developed at Colorado School of Mines. We've been at this for the last 3 years, working on the synthesis of the polymer, and now we're ready to scale that up. So, myself, our PhD in-house, and also some folks from Colorado School of Mines and also UMass have been, just instrumental in helping us scale this up, and also Adam Weber at Lawrence Berkeley. So really strong team. And just in case anyone's confused, we're the little thing in the middle between the electrodes, the membrane that allows hydroxide to go between the electrodes. So it's the exact opposite of a proton exchange membrane. And the advantages there are you don't need to use platinum group metals. You don't need titanium. You don't need platinum or iridium. So there's quite a few benefits. And also there's some fun chemistries that you can do in alkaline environments. But basically, the magic is this tri-block copolymer that makes it superconductive while retaining its structure and mechanical strength. And so again, the benefit is you don't need that platinum group metal or titanium, which by our calculation is around $400,000 per megawatt of capacity, depending on what concentration you use. So when you're selling a 5 megawatt system, that's a $2 million discount. So quite a bit cheaper from a capital perspective. And then when we compare ourselves to other AEMs, as far as conductivity, you're looking at a reduction in electrical use, so better efficiency by 12%. So overall, it's a 28% reduction kind of at the start. So if you're buying electricity at 12 or 10 cents a kilowatt hour, that's roughly $1.75 per kilo cheaper. And so it goes up from there. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make hydrogen more economic and help those applications develop. We've had great results. This is a test by Nell. So you can see we got all the way up to an amp in KOH at 1.95 volts. So if you know anything about electrolyzer polarization curves, that's pretty good for an AEM. If you look at PEM, it's about double that. And that's why people still use PEM, because you can get a lot of hydrogen out of that. But, as platinum and iridium prices go up and a lot of other considerations, there's a case to be made to switch the AEMs. Also, we've been working with some electrolyzer, carbonate electrolyzer development. And we've had excellent results for those who would like to stay away from KOH. And you can see there on the left, that's an electrolyzer test done at CSM that was 600 hours, and they pulled the membrane, and it just kept getting better and better and better and better. And they thought something was wrong, and then pulled it out, and lo and behold, it was just getting more and more conditioned. It was pretty miraculous. But yeah, so there's a lot of promise there as well for those who are looking to do maybe some carbonate type testing, lower yields, but there's a lot of advantages. You don't have to worry about contamination and stuff like that. So we are actively, also fuel cell testing. So you can see on the left there's another polarization curve where kind of the peak was at 800 milliamps or 900 milliamps, and then they had a flooding issue. But it's pretty competitive with fuel cells on the PEM side with like a Nafion based system. So there's a lot of promise there as well. So if you know folks who are looking at fuel cell development, we'd love to help out in any way we can. And right now we are doing our pilot run for samples, sending those out to customers, and also scheduling our large format production run here in April. So hopefully deliver in April or May. So we're really scaling up. If you'd like more information, or you want samples, or someone who wants samples, you can email me, sales@SparkIonics, or there's a QR code you can scan with your phone. So yeah, any questions I can answer on that?
Hey, Sean, are you doing the whole stack, or are you just doing a part of the stack?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we just do the membrane.
Okay.
So we sell primarily direct to electrolyzer manufacturers or fuel cell manufacturers, or even just stack developers.
Gotcha. Thanks.
We also have electrolyzer partners that we've worked very close with for the last 2 years, who are kind of developing their own proprietary stacks that have said, hey, if you know someone who wants a specific whatever, give me a call, we'll work on it. So there's a lot of opportunity there as well, if you're looking to do some proof of concept or demonstrations.
Well, thank you, Sean. It never ceases to amaze me as I'm contacted by different people in Colorado how much activity we actually have going on here around hydrogen and renewable energy in general. So it's exciting, to see what you're doing, and wish you good luck. I hope this really takes off, for
Yeah,
Spark.
thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. And by the way, the company is Spark, but the Ionics is it Spark Ionics, or help me understand the title?
Yeah, Spark Ionics. It's just a play on words. Usually you see it ICS. We just made it X.
Yeah. No, it's clever. Good. Appreciate that. Oh, by the way, I just noticed we got 48 participants on the call today. So thank you, everybody, for your continuing support. Let's see, where is my button? I got to start sharing screen again here. Let's see, where do we go? Why has this closed on me? Here we go. All right. Okay. All right. So next subject, I wanted to, I just talked about how there's so many companies here in Colorado in the clean tech industries, and wanted to talk a little bit about this. The company SARAD, SALRADH, which is up in Boulder, has done a lot of work on compiling just about every kind of information you could think about around hydrogen and clean energy, who the sellers are, who the buyers are. They've really tracked this. And so beyond anybody else, I mean, they really know what's going on and who's doing it. And so they published this Clean Tech Innovation Hub map showing the top clean tech hubs. And how about that? Colorado is number 5. And, we're behind like the San Francisco Bay Area and Silicon Valley and Boston, New York, Los Angeles. So I think that's something we can be proud of. And their criteria is here in green, that they looked at well-funded research institutes, robust technology development, successful startups, and I got something covering the rest of the screen here, support infrastructure. So, gosh, I don't know, is Jackson or Paul Nelson on from by any chance from SARAD? I didn't think they were on. All right. Well, enough said. So my point here is we got a lot to be proud of, and we got a lot going on here. And to that point, how well, CCIA, which is the Colorado Clean Tech Industries Association, basically represents all of these different clean tech industries by providing, as you can read it there, advocacy and collaboration and resources. And CHN is an initiative of CCIA. We were formed kind of under them, getting a little bit of support from them, but really we've operated pretty independently, and that's my fault. And I don't think that was anything to brag about necessarily, but I've been having talks with the new executive director of CCIA, and we're talking about trying to have a little bit more collaboration between CCIA and CHN. And one of the things we talked about was doing more information sharing and networking between these different tech industries. Um, the ones that are involved are mining, of course, here in Colorado, oil and gas, sustainable aviation fuels, and other energy and so forth. And we really haven't been having any, I don't know what you'd even call it, just seminars or webinars or almost like dating sessions between these different industries to talk about how there are synergies and how we can collaborate. I mean, for example, I've never presented to anybody at the mining side about where hydrogen and how hydrogen can be used for mining. Um, Talked a little bit with some of the oil and gas people, especially in developing those resources for hydrogen production. But look for more of this happening in the future as we try to start bringing all of these clean tech industries kind of under the same umbrella of CCIA and getting some real synergies going, like we've been doing with the stakeholders with CHN. So that's an initiative going on right now. Anybody want to comment on that or any questions? All right. And of course, we can always come back. All right. So one of the things that we wanted to do today, and again, this is, Sean, who you just heard from, had this idea of trying to do some asset sharing between the stakeholders of Colorado Hydrogen Network. So the idea here would be to try to set up some kind of a system where the CHN stakeholders could try to cooperate, maybe share assets, maybe share testing services, maybe renting time from each other on underutilized test equipment. If somebody's got I'll just pick something like scanning electron microscope and it's only being used 20% of the time. Well, maybe they'd like to rent time out on that to some other company that doesn't really have the money or the access to those kinds of test equipment. So it occurred to us as Sean and I were talking about this that if we did try to set up some kind of a testing services, it's got to be a bit of an organization. Should it be like a startup company? Maybe a grad student that's getting out of school has an interest in that and wants to try to set something up. Obviously, if you're going to have testing services, you need test equipment. That stuff's very expensive, but maybe if the universities have equipment that is underutilized, they'd like to rent time on that. And the testing services can almost be like not a booking agent, but you get the idea of somebody kind of setting that up. So that's the idea we wanted to throw out. And of course, we need some way to administer this, a way for people to find out what's available, to sign up, schedule time, and so forth. I certainly don't have time to do that, but throwing this idea out, maybe there's somebody out there amid the stakeholders, or somebody knows of someone getting out of school or whatever that's looking to do something like this. So I was hoping that, I know this is difficult by Zoom, but if we could have a little bit of a group discussion here, if people either have ideas of, gosh, I really wish I had this, or if you want to talk about ideas for how to set up a clearinghouse for this or whatever. So I hope we've got some folks on that aren't too bashful, that are willing to jump in. And maybe, first of all, Sean, I don't know if you want to comment on any of this before we have questions from folks.
Yeah, I think, at least from Spark's perspective, we've got a need for certain testing that, Mines has been very, very generous. And obviously we had a grant from the state of Colorado to kind of help fund a lot of that testing and stuff. But, grant periods end and money dries up. And now they need more money to figure that out. And we're happy to pay for it, but there's not really an effective way to say, hey, yeah, I'd love you to do this conductivity test, because guess what? Potentiostats for that costs $250,000. So I can't really afford that today. So how do we do that effectively? And so that was kind of at least what spurred the conversation from our side. But I was curious, if other folks had similar experience with needing some kind of testing. We actually just kind of rented some time on our rheometer. We have a capillary rheometer, and we do a few runs and then it just sits. So, this company called us up and like, hey, we heard you have a rheometer. Can we use it? I was like, sure. Yeah, it's sitting right there. Let's do it. So, we've already kind of exercised this a little bit in our mind and kind of saw a need for it. So I guess my question kind of to the group is, does anybody else have any experience with that kind of a thing, and also a need for that kind of a testing or asset sharing, something like that? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. All right, let's open it up to the group of folks who think it's a good idea, bad idea, needs that you know of, or assets that you might want to lease out, rent out if you could. The thing about the Colorado Hydrogen Network is the reason why we're here is to try to connect everybody. So there's a way for people to know about each other. There's a way for people to communicate. And I think this is really an extension of that, of saying, hey, let's set up a clearinghouse for testing or asset sharing. So comments, anybody? Come on, don't be shy.
Brian,
Yeah.
Bill Eady here.
Hey, Bill.
At the risk of going too large in scale, I'm gratified that finally there's a great deal of attention given to the pipeline problem. Can we use the natural gas pipeline network, billions of dollars worth already in the ground, for moving hydrogen? And I attended the December 6th through 7 meeting of the High Blend Phase 2 kickoff meeting in LA, hosted by SoCalGas. And there's a great deal of justified anxiety, of course, about the hydrogen embrittlement and hydrogen corrosion cracking problem in hydrogen in steel. We need to invent a new kind of line pipe that's highly immune, resistant to hydrogen embrittlement, and that's going to take a lot of testing, not pieces of test equipment that our friends have on the shelves someplace, but a major testing effort. But that's part of where the hydrogen industry needs to focus now, I think, if we're going to get over the problem of how are we going to move all this hydrogen around and deliver it. Maybe we need to make it on site, very close to the site, via finally tapping deep hot dry rock geothermal. Mm-hmm. Big topic. I won't go any further. Thank you.
Well, I'm a big believer in geothermal, especially when you look at the maps that NREL's published of the geothermal resources in the Western U.S. I mean, I think in the Western U.S. someday we'll look back and say, "Oh, wind and solar, how quaint! Boy, that it's so much easier to use geothermal, same capex costs and everything else." But at any rate, yeah, I mean, huge questions, and these are things we've got to answer soon because we're running out of time as far as the environment goes.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet, Bill. Good to see you, by the way. How's life up in Juneau these days?
Snowy, very snowy. We've only got our winter dump, about 3 feet of it.
Well, and you're on the coast too. Is that unusual to get that much there?
Yes, we're inland from the coast. So therefore the moist air from the Gulf is trying to rise over the mountain range right behind us. And it doesn't make it. It precipitates on the way to Canada.
All right. Well, better wax up the skis.
Yep. But we have no traffic, only 32,000 people here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's great that you're such a supporter here in Colorado, Bill. Appreciate what you're doing. So, well, does anybody have any comments about this asset sharing common test? You think it's a good idea? Should I set something up on the website?
So, Brian, I was thinking about this. I think like in the way that this Zoom call is set up, it may be challenging to kind of orchestrate it, but perhaps we do like a workshop the next session where we jump into a whiteboard and kind of structure like what kinds of assets do we have? Are these like, shareable small assets? Are they like technical capabilities? What kind of, software or assets people have? And, maybe facilitate that through a different platform other than a PowerPoint, and actually kind of prep for, plan for, and kind of trying to bin things in a couple different ways, and then kind of maybe even socialize it before the next meeting and try to get a group of shareable assets, maybe even talk about, you know, cost shares or something like that on how they could actually be done.
Yeah, and Phil, the other thing that I really need to do is get with the universities, with CU and CSU and Mines, and just see if they think that this would be something they could support.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
and of course, we're not expecting them to do it for free, but probably a lot cheaper than if you just went out and hired a testing service like an NREL or something to do a test. But
Sure.
I like your idea of you're right. This isn't the best venue for back and forth discussion, unfortunately. And I am looking for ways that we can have some face-to-face meetings. So yeah, maybe we set something up kind of like what you did at the what was the name of the site there in Arvada?
That was Thrive Workplace
Yeah.
in Arvada. Yeah, that was a great facility.
Oh yeah, fantastic. I especially love the fact they had some porter on tap right there.
Yeah. A little bit of beer, kombucha, tea, coffee, sparkling
Yeah.
water. It's great. Yeah.
I don't think any of us partook during the session. We didn't want to fall asleep, but yeah, that's a
I appreciate that. Thank you.
not that you would have put us to sleep, Phil. But
Oh no, not at all.
yeah. Well, all right. So I don't know. It doesn't seem like anybody wants to jump out and maybe I'm just not giving you the opportunity, but does anybody want to comment? Good idea, bad idea, interest, no interest? Don't be shy.
I think there was a good question in the chat about even space could be one of those quote assets. So that might be another opportunity. I'd be happy to, help facilitate a collection of assets if you need someone to spearhead that.
All right. Well, thanks, Sean. Well, why don't maybe you and I should have another call, look at maybe setting up a face-to-face meeting, float that idea out there, see if we get many takers, have a discussion around this, and just see where it can go. Because, like I say, I think that this is really the role of the Colorado Hydrogen Network is to not only bring people together, but if we can act as not a brokering service, but bringing ideas like this together, I think it'd be good. So,
hey, Brian, this is John Cornish.
Hey, John.
Just maybe to start the bidding. We have a high pressure test compressor that we use for testing hydrogen systems, and mostly it sits around doing nothing. It does require, test gases and things like that, but it goes to 20,000 PSI. So if anybody needed pressure testing, our unit is available. I don't know that we'd rent it out, but if you could bring the stuff to us to be tested, it's not a labor intensive process, and we've made the investment in the equipment.
Mm-hmm. That's great, John. Yeah, thanks. I like the way you put that to start the bidding, but I think a lot of people on this call know you, John, but there's probably people who don't. So would you introduce yourself? And this is very timely, especially since we've been talking about this this grant, which we're expecting EPC to be involved in the performance of doing that.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. EPC is a hydrogen systems integrator and fabrication facility in Cheyenne, Wyoming. We were in Colorado for, 17 or 18 years and moved across the border here. We're just 4 miles across the border from Colorado. So we're sort of still part of the Colorado Hydrogen Network. And we're really excited about this project for New Day. It's just kind of a wonderful blessing that it happened after all this time and kind of nearing the deadlines for Seth and Buford. And I think it's just the beginning of a lot of other opportunities. I've got a million thoughts we'll share with them, and they'll share with the rest of the network, I'm sure. We have a kickoff meeting later this week, and we'll kind of start working on what the real scopes will be and how quickly we can get some hydrogen fueling going to supplement what NREL already has in Golden.
Yeah, well, John, you've been building hydrogen producing and using equipment for, well, it's over 25 years, right?
21 years.
21 years.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, as EPC, that's when I started EPC, but I'd been sort of coincidentally doing hydrogen projects for most of my adult life. I didn't realize this is where it would lead, but hydrogen is me now. That's my home address is 1008 Scott Drive, which is a coincidence. Our work phone number is 307-554-1008, and we're on Hydrogen Way. So a lot of things are coming together, but to say I'm a supporter of hydrogen is an understatement.
Well, yeah, and I know that you kind of rescued the on-site electrolysis site that's at Cal State LA, Michael Dre's facility there, and got that going. And I know you've got at least one or two other hydrogen fuel stations out in California, right?
We've designed or permitted or built 37 hydrogen fueling stations in the US and abroad. So probably as many as anybody in the world.
Yeah. Well, so pleased that you're part of the Colorado Hydrogen Network. I know you were at our kickoff meeting that we had back in December of 2019 and have been part of it ever since. So hopefully things are just going to really take off and get better and better. So thanks.
Sure. And a great extension to the I-25 corridor will be to put one right up here in Cheyenne at the intersection of I-80 and I-25. And we're in discussions with people that might want to do that. And the state of Wyoming is very supportive of it also. So maybe we'll go back to at one time, this was the Rocky Mountain Hydrogen Association, and maybe it'll end up that way again. I hope so.
Well, and we really did kind of agonize over the title. At least I did, because we didn't want to make it sound like we're only about Colorado. We're in Colorado, I guess, but it made for a nice logo anyway. But so yeah, we're not totally just limiting ourselves to the border of the state.
Sure. Well, as long as we're part of it, we're happy. So
yep,
thanks again for the
John.
chance to say hi.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, John. Well, we still have a little bit of time, but I'm not against ending early. But anybody want to put any comments in, questions, any subject right now? Everybody's kind of quiet today.
Hello, this is Jack.
Hey, Jack.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Good. Let me see if I can turn my video on here. Yeah, so I'm dealing with the issue of hydrogen fueling and making it economic. And one of the big issues that we face if you're going to convert heavy duty trucks from diesel to hydrogen is the disparity in fuel cost. There was a mention in the early part of your presentation, Brian, about somehow trying to equalize that. But just to put it in perspective, I had the opportunity to visit with Rising Creek Transportation and now understand that they're looking at competing with diesel at the time, which is a couple of weeks ago, that was being sold at $3.25 per gallon. And if hydrogen is selling, for example, at $8, let's just use that price, and that's not unreasonable. And you get basically the same mileage from a kilogram of hydrogen that you do from a gallon of diesel, then you can understand there's a problem, right? You know, your hydrogen cost is 2.5 times as expensive. So are the trucks. So anyways, the thought is that maybe there's some kind of legislative initiative that could be advanced by this organization to the legislature. And I see that you've got great connections there to somehow have some kind of equalization. And I don't know exactly what the mechanism would be, but I want to put it on the table as an idea for this group to consider. And that's really my thought for today.
Yeah. And, you're right on the money with this being an issue. And maybe for everybody on the call, part of the issue here is that if you take a passenger car, and convert it from gasoline to hydrogen, it's going to be 2.5 times as efficient. And these are numbers that the California Air Resource Board publishes as their EER, their energy efficiency ratio. And for an equal passenger car running diesel to hydrogen, it's about a 1.9 because diesel's got a little bit more energy per gallon. But when you get up to the big rigs, to the Class 8s, they're only about 1.1 times as efficient. So, you know, as Jack, you're pointing out, you've got to get the price per kilogram of your hydrogen pretty close to the price per gallon for diesel.
Right.
And yeah, one way to do that is with subsidies and so forth. But the trouble with subsidies is they don't last forever and they go away. And can you convince your investors to invest with something where your bottom line is dependent on those subsidies? Another way to do it would be there's very inexpensive ways to get hydrogen. Hydrogen wells, natural hydrogen wells, and I'm going to have Jack Ellis on the next meeting in February to talk about that. There's also Proton Technologies' technique of generating hydrogen with old oil wells. They've talked about 25 to 50 cents a kilogram, but now you've got to move the hydrogen. And so you probably can do that at a cost-effective way by liquefying it. And I've been having quite a few conversations with Gen H2 about that and so forth. So this is a problem we still have to solve. We can do on-site electrolysis and be competitive with gas and diesel for passenger vehicles and the light duty, medium duty type vehicles. But when it comes to the big rigs, which, you know, everybody's saying, hey, there's a great market there. Yeah, we got to find a way to get the price of hydrogen down. And I think it can be done even without the subsidies. Of course, the subsidies will help.
Yeah, and let me just mention, you touched on liquefaction as a way to provide something that's easily transportable, but liquefaction requires a lot of capital investment, and it also requires a lot of energy. So 20 to 30% of the hydrogen energy is used just for liquefaction. And so you would have to have some other source of energy to make it, I think, economically attractive. But I did want to raise the subject. It's something that anybody that's in hydrogen fueling, and especially if they're targeting the heavy duty truck market, is facing as an issue. So enough said. Thank you.
All right. Did somebody
I
have
have a
something you
comment on
wanted to
that.
inject there?
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah, go ahead,
Brian?
Sean.
Yeah. Yeah. Our company likes to keep a very tight watch on how much electrolyzer stacks are costing and kind of gauging that market there. One thing that we've seen, you know, I just posted a link to the European hydrogen market, which had some interesting metrics to look at. And you know, one of the things that we're constantly looking at is the capacity for electrolyzer manufacturing. So when you look at, you know, the adoption rate for solar, for instance, the technology was, you know, pretty much the same. Like efficiencies haven't really jumped up exponentially, but because they are being manufactured in such volume, the cost has precipitously fell. You know, it just bottomed out. So what we're seeing is kind of a similar price metric going on with the amount of capacity to manufacture electrolyzers. So, for instance, a big company out there doing AEM electrolyzers is Enapter, and you know they just brought on, or they're about to bring on, a gigawatt worth of electrolyzer manufacturing. Companies like Evelo are trying to hit 3 gigawatts in the next 2 years. This report that I just posted was saying that Europe already has 5.67 or 5.7 gigawatts of capacity, manufacturing capacity, whereas a year ago that was estimated to be at 3 by the end of 2023. So they are already almost double the capacity for manufacturing this. So with that, you're going to see a huge drop in electrolyzer costs, and that's a huge part of it. And as AEMs take over as well, those costs will go down even further. So as an example, Enapter is trying to hit, I think, around $500 a kilowatt. So yeah, for a, you know, gigawatt system, you know, do the math, but right now the cost is like 2,000. So you can see, like, in just a couple years, it's going to be a quarter of the cost. So, as you know, we would all like to see the cost of hydrogen drop drastically tomorrow, but I mean, it's going to come quicker than we might also realize. And then the second point to that is, one other thing that came out of that report, was the price of hydrogen relative to before, Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and when he turned off the taps to cheap Russian gas. And so in 2021, it was like less than €3. In 2022, it was almost €7. So maybe not a great thing for them, but it kind of shows how susceptible all these energy markets are. So including oil and gas, and that could be something, that could be an angle for selling it to, stakeholders, where, look, do you want to be reliant on good relations with the Middle East, or do you want to have some independence and kind of set your own destiny?
Yeah.
So,
Well, and of course, the capital or the CapEx side of this is one side of it, but then the energy costs are the other side. And there's, starting to be so many companies out there that want to use the electric grid for swapping their energy, whether it's from a solar or wind array or hopefully geothermal at some point. But by the time you put it on the grid, then that bumps the price way up. So just the cost of your electricity is going to exceed the cost per gallon of the diesel. So that was actually the question that I used my silver bullet when we were with Chris Hansen, Senator Chris Hansen, and asked him about the work that the legislature is doing with the Public Utilities Commission in Colorado to help transition them away from we generate and sell electricity to we are a clearinghouse of a grid that everybody can use to exchange their energy, because we've got to get those prices down, as Jack was saying. I mean, right now it's $4.50 per kilogram just for the electricity, and if you want to sell your hydrogen at $3.50 to compete with diesel, you've obviously got to be a lot below that. So yeah, there's some work to be done. I think there's some ways to get there. As Jack pointed out, liquefying hydrogen costs energy, it costs money to move it. But there are some pretty cheap sources out there, like natural hydrogen wells and the proton technologies technique. So that's something I'm very tuned into. I'm continuing to call people, try to bring different groups together to try to solve this. I can only move the needle so much, but it's definitely something I'm working on.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, there's also the 45V tax credit, the production tax credit, which will help enormously if people can qualify. It's up to $3 per kilogram, but it's tough to qualify. The rules are very tough to live with. You've already touched on that topic before, Brian. That may be something to follow up on as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a white paper and I sent it off to FCHIA. I sent it off to the Treasury Department and Hydrogen Forward and other people, trying to at least get some sanity around the temporal matching, which is just nonsense, absolute nonsense. You don't need to be generating and using it at the same time as long as it's within the same billing window. So I continue to be frustrated and fight that one, because I think it's put out there by people who don't understand electricity, but I do what I can. So hopefully that's enough in the end. Well, anything else? We've still got a couple of minutes if anybody has anything else they'd like to bring up.
I guess one other comment, building on what Sean was saying about the cost being driven down on the capital cost for the fueling. Obviously, it's going to be driven down on the capital cost for the vehicles as well. But the efficiency of the fuel cells, the efficiency of the electrolyzers are going to go up quite dramatically. And pick a prognosticator, but most of them are indicating that as you indicated, right now it's basically a 1-to-1 in the heavy duty vehicles in hydrogen efficiency versus diesel efficiency. But a lot of them are projecting that to get closer to 1.5 and even up to 2, depending upon the exact classification of the vehicle here in the relatively near future. So the nice thing about diesel, we know everything about it. The bad thing about diesel, it is a very mature technology that is capped out. But with fuel cells, with electrolyzers. Those are brand new technologies that should improve pretty dramatically in the near future. And we should see that driving down the cost of hydrogen pretty dramatically here, in the relatively near future.
Yeah, thanks, Buford. Well, as Bill Gates said, we all tend to underestimate the amount of change that can happen in at least a 10-year horizon. So let's hope it's more like 5, but um, there's going to be some exciting developments out there for sure.
Hi there. Can I say something?
Absolutely.
Hi, Ed Van Dyne, Plastic to Green. We're standing up plants. We're not going to be ready for 2 or 3 years, but we'll have a prototype pilot plant here in Colorado to start. And we'll be making hydrogen from waste plastic. So all of our hydrogen is coming to us for free because the hydrogen is embedded in the plastic. And we're taking unrecyclable waste plastic, not specific recyclable plastic. And so we'll be able to get 50 cents a gallon ammonia to market, in 2 to 3 years. So typical ammonia has about half the energy value of gasoline. So we'll end up at effectively $1 a gallon comparison to the 3, 4, whatever dollars a gallon for gasoline and diesel. So it's coming. A lot cheaper ways to go about making hydrogen, and we're just making it all the way to ammonia so that we can transport it easily to the site. And then there's at least 3 different companies making cracking technology for ammonia to split it back apart hydrogen for use in vehicles, fuel cells, whatever.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Ed. And Ed was down at the Capitol with us all. Was that last week, I guess? And you were in the picture I showed earlier. So, yeah, great to have you as part of the group here.
Yep. Well, we'll be part of the solution, and once we get into production here.
Excellent. Well, kudos to what you're doing, and you're helping rid us of all that pesky plastic as well.
Thanks for
Right.
having me.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else?
Brian.
Yeah, go
Brian,
ahead.
Bill here. I think I'm on the advisory committee for the Pacific Northwest Hydrogen Hub. One of the promising markets for them, which I advocated as a member of the advisory committee as they were putting together their full application, is fueling the Southeast Alaska bound cruise ships. 40 of them made that journey from Seattle and ports of Vancouver, BC in the summer of 2022, burning about 200 million gallons of bunker fuel, fossil fuel. The equivalent of that per unit of energy is about 180,000 metric tons of hydrogen. Of course, it would be clean hydrogen made in the Pacific Northwest, in the Pacific Northwest Hydrogen Hub, which has been chosen for negotiation of award. I suppose that's going on now. We haven't been asked for our opinion on that matter. But there's a possibility of an early large market if the cruise ship companies would comply and convert their ships or scrap them and build new ones that run on hydrogen. Or as a practical matter, multi-fuel, because they're going to be in parts of the world where hydrogen clean is not available yet. So that's one of the things I'll be working on. Thank you.
Good, good. Well, of course, hydrogen can be a little bit problematic for storing vast quantities on a ship. I know Maersk has built, I think it's 7 ships that are going to be burning methanol, which is, of course, a hydrocarbon. But if that hydrocarbon is produced from biology, from either algae or other plant mass, that could possibly be at least a carbon neutral source. So, yeah, we're going to see some real interesting developments in the maritime area, I think, that may not be paralleled in transportation.
The methanol challenge is you need CO2 plus hydrogen to make it. Where are you going to get your waste CO2?
Well, not if you made it from biology. If you just converted algae and then used a refining process to get that to methanol. And you could even say, all right, if you're going to do that, then some of that biocrude from your algae has got to be sequestered. And now you've made it a little bit carbon negative, at least. And the carbon came from the atmosphere. So we'll see. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see the economics and the science of how some of these things shake out. There could be some surprises, just like we had in the days of VHS and Betamax videotapes, and Betamax was the clear technical winner, but the market preferred VHS. So we'll probably have some of those things in the world of hydrogen too.
Right. Thanks for the meeting today.
You bet, Bill, and thanks for being such a great supporter. Appreciate that. All right, how are we doing on time? We're actually a minute past. So I'm going to call the meeting and adjourn, but as always, please send me comments, questions, or whatever, and we'll keep the dialogue going with everybody. So thanks everybody for being here today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.